Hello everyone, my name is Don Krishnaswami and I'm a violinist and violist, and today I'm going to talk just a little bit about a critical aspect of playing the violin, the most critical aspect of playing the violin, which is the bow. We think about the fingers on the left hand and how they stop the strings and change the length of the strings and give us our pitches. And that's got its intricacies also, for sure. Just putting them in the right place always, 100% of the time, is kind of a life's work, really. But when it comes down to it, the art of the violin is found in this little object, which we call a stick. Technically it's a bow, but we'll often refer to it as the stick. Here's the stick of wood right here. So I'm going to talk about what I call in my teaching the three fundamentals of use of the bow. And those are contact point, pressure, and speed. Contact point, also called sounding point, pressure, and speed. These three elements, which are really, elements of physics, have an impact on playing the violin. There are just countless different combinations of the three of them that produce different results. So for the most basic expose on these three elements, let me talk about first contact point. So we have the strings here and the bridge that they rest on top of with a lot of pressure pushing down, and then they go down this way down the fingerboard. Now the strongest part of the string is, of course, right up by the bridge. And as you go down, the string gets weaker and weaker. So we have to be very careful where we choose to place the bow on the string in relation to the bridge or to the fingerboard. And putting it at different places is going to get different results. And the next one I'll talk about is speed. And I'm going to talk about all of them more in a moment, but speed, which is simply, obviously, how fast you draw the bow. And the other one is pressure. And the pressure I call the vertical aspect of bowing. When one doesn't know anything about the violin, all one is aware of is the horizontal aspect. But if I do just the horizontal aspect of bowing, you're not going to get much. So I'm going to illustrate each of these by themselves, okay? So let's start with contact point. If I play the violin aware of contact point only, and pressure and speed isn't part of it, here's how I'm going to sound. That's it. Nothing. Because all I'm doing is placing the bow on a contact point. And if I go with speed only, I'm going to assume the bow is going to be on the string, and I'm not going to care about contact point or about pressure. I'm going to get... Or I can go slowly, but I'm barely getting any sound. I'm letting the bow rest on the string, but I'm intentionally not applying pressure because I was just showing speed at that point. Now, if we go with pressure, then we get this. Also no sound. So contact point and pressure alone, of course, don't give you any sound. It's the speed that gives you sound. That's obvious. So now, what happens when I use different kind of combinations of these? Well, this is one of the hardest things about playing the violin, and very difficult to teach it also. Now, if you think about the piano, some of these elements are preset at the factory, okay? You got the strings. Well, I'm looking at an upright piano, but on a grand piano, they are horizontal. And then you have the hammers that are calibrated and preset to strike the string exactly in the right place all the time. And there's no way it'll ever not strike the string in the right place. Lucky pianists, let me tell you right now, because we always have to be managing our contact point. Like the hammer hits the strings, that contact point's the same. We don't get that. And that's a long work. I'm not going to say life work. I think we do kind of master that. Eventually it becomes instinctive, but it takes a lot of training just to do that. So let me play with good pressure and contact point and speed. I'm just playing open strings. This isn't about the left hand today, so just open strings. So there I'm applying a good combination of the three of those so that I get an optimum sound. Now let me change one of them. I'm going to change the contact point. Watch out, because this is not going to be nice. Going to apply the same pressure and the same speed, but go on a weak contact point. I cringe to hear this. Ready? Okay? So anybody who's had a kid who's learning violin may have heard this kind of sound. And now you know it's because they're having trouble finding the right contact point. Okay, now let me do another thing. I'm going to release the pressure and be on a strong contact point. Keep the same speed. That sounds kind of airy and surfacey. I think of that as like one of those skating insects on a pond that just grazes the surface and doesn't even cause a ripple. And I don't know if you heard on the video, but there were some overtones of harmonics that I even heard because I was only just grazing the string. So that was not enough pressure at all. Now let me do something about the speed. I'm going to have, like the original one I played with all three working well, but I'm now going to make the speed slower, okay? Also, this won't be pleasant. Here we go. Ugh, it makes me cringe, but the thing is, the pressure and contact point were exactly the same. The speed made all the difference, right? So if you can imagine having to manage all of these things as we play a passage of music, it really takes a lot of, well, you know, at first when you're learning, I think a lot of calculating and intentionally trying to stay on a good contact point and have all those elements working together. So let me just, you know, play, I'll use the left hand for a moment here. I'm just going to play a simple scale, okay? So... Okay, it sounds pretty good. Now, I'm going to play the same scale a little bit softer and a little bit more delicately, and I'm going to change my contact point. Notice I came quite close to the fingerboard here where the string is weaker. That requires releasing the pressure so it doesn't sound like it did a few minutes ago. And also it causes a nice kind of maybe sweeter, softer tone. We have a designation called sottovoce in music. That means soft voice. And that part of the string makes a nice sottovoce. It makes it possible to play quite softly and beautifully. You know, and maybe get a kind of special tone color we're looking for. So all these three elements, that was just a little bit of a tip of the iceberg, but you can appreciate a little bit how much goes into just getting a sound out of the bow. And I just wanted to actually do one more thing, which is, I want to point out one more thing, which is when I was playing that scale on a good contact point, you saw the bow just staying there on that contact point. That doesn't just happen, that comes from training. So often I see students, you know, this kind of thing. You see how the contact point was not managed well just then. That's so hard to learn how to do that. And it has to do with taking the arm on the correct trajectory away from the violin so that it stays parallel to the bridge, basically. We want that to stay parallel, and then we can choose our contact point. So I think that's probably enough for now before I start totally geeking out on you. It's just interesting to see just this aspect of how difficult it is to play the violin. And we all respect the technique of the bow that doesn't come easily, doesn't come naturally. It takes a lot of training. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about how the bow works.